My name is Jenny Bratt. So thank you both so much for joining today. I think it's going to be a really interesting one, looking at blockchain, fintech, and crypto law. Shagun, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Jenny. Thank you for the introduction. You've named two of my favorite places, Cape Town and Phuket. So yes, so I'm from India. I stay in New Delhi, which is the capital. I work for a corporate law firm here called AZB and Partners. It's a pan-India law firm, one of the largest in India. I've been here for about 11 years, and I'm part of the TMT and Fintech team. So, very topical again, and really excited to be a part of the GLE panel. So the panel I'm part of is crypto. So excited to share insights, practical developments, and learn about other jurisdictions as well. So when I heard about the roundtable, honestly, I was like, I'm glad we're getting sort of some face time with the others, similarly placed, councils, and it'll be interesting to know and exchange notes. So super excited about this. Yeah.
Thank you, Shagun, and thank you so much for joining today. Stefan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So hi, Jenny, and hi, Shagun. So my name is Stéphane Daniel. I'm a French qualified lawyer. I live in Paris. I've been practicing law for about 12 years. And I co-founded DNA Partners, which is a boutique law firm based in France. We have an office in Paris, Marseille, and also in the south of France, close to Nice. We are about to reach 17 lawyers. So in number of lawyers dedicated to the blockchain industry, we're the biggest in France, and I guess as well the biggest in the EU. And we do cover corporate regulatory litigation, tax, labor, and IP/IT and data. And we advise major players in the blockchain industry for the past 4 years now.
Fabulous, and thank you. And I'm going to pose the first question. So what key regulatory developments in your jurisdiction signal a move from enforcement-driven oversight towards more structured and predictable frameworks in the crypto or fintech space? Would you like to kick off, Shagun?
Yes, I think so. Again, a very relevant question in the Indian context, because we've seen a lot happen, at least in the emerging tech space, which includes both crypto and, fintech related technologies, at least in the last decade or two. So maybe, quickly starting with how the blockchain and crypto space has evolved. We were a jurisdiction which essentially, didn't have any regulation. We didn't have any dedicated starting point of how we want to look at virtual digital assets. So in 2013, 2014, we just had one central bank, which is our Reserve Bank of India, that was actually, responsible for oversight in all of these sectors. They didn't have any teeth because there was no regulation, but they did issue a lot of advisories cautioning, the world at large, specifically consumers investing in this space, that, this is an uncertain area. We don't know whether you're going to have any recourse should things go wrong. And therefore, it's up to you. It's at your own risk. So from 2013, and we saw this till about 2018, it was just purely directives and advisories that were issued without any teeth. In 18 sometime, there was a directive which the RBI issued, which then actually restricted any person in the payment ecosystem from dealing in cryptocurrencies generally, which I think was it was a huge sort of, for the people in the ecosystem, it was of course a huge, they had to take a step back and weren't able to kind of function and continue to do and undertake their business in India. And it was a big impact for those people. And I think this was a huge, in our timeline, one of the most significant, sort of reforms, because like I said, it impacted the whole ecosystem. This was struck down, this directive by the Reserve Bank in India in the Supreme Court, which is our apex court, in 2020, when the RBI, there was a suit filed by the Mobile Association of India in the Supreme Court to see that this is a completely, inordinate kind of ban that has been imposed. It's not making any sense. It's against someone's fundamental, sort of their right to practice a profession, things like that. So it was actually struck down as disproportionate and lacking proper backing. And hence, from a regulated and banned space, we came into now a more okay, RBI, why don't you now look at some sort of directions as opposed to, kind of banning it. So this was again something in 2020 where now the system opened up and there was no legislation yet, but it basically led us to believe that yes, we're moving towards more of we don't want to ban it, we want to keep up with the rest of the sophisticated like the US, Singapore, things like that, and have sort of a calibrated approach to kind of regulating it. So I think this was very important in the blockchain and crypto space that led to something from zero regulation to a ban to then again a gray area where you were still permitted to do business. That said, sort of calibrated approach where at least there is something that we're aware of. And thereafter in 22-23, each sort of ministry in India, whether it was the companies, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, the income tax, which is our taxation regime, all of them started introducing certain legislations to kind of recognize it and then build certain safeguards around it, including our Consumer Protection Act. So similarly in our fintech space, things like that happened. We were completely only banking sort of regulations prior to say 2008 until we got a specific regulation which let non-banking companies come in. And from there, we moved towards now a regime which recognizes non-banking players in the sector, which are like your private players, non-banking finance companies. So it's come a long way, and now we also have regulation for sort of each of those. So I'm going to take a pause with that. Sorry for the rant, but there's so much in this space that it's important to kind of understand how we've reached here.
Thank you so much for sharing. Stefan, would you like to give some perspective from your jurisdiction?
Sure. So what I can say on my perspective is that in France, the first legal regime that recognized crypto assets was introduced in 19 and 20. So exactly like in India, Shagun, it was not regulated before. So everything was mostly contractual. And from 19 and 20, a new regime was established that allowed players to register with the French regulators, so the equivalent of the SEC, the French Financial Market Authority, and the French Banking Authority as well. As from that moment, then MiCA, so the Market in Crypto Asset Regulation, was discussed at the level of the EU. It was discussed mostly in reaction to the Libra project, which had established an association in Switzerland to issue the equivalent of what we could call today an asset reference token with a basket of various fiat currencies. And so MiCA was intended and was designed to really be super strict on stablecoin and on asset reference tokens. It was adopted. It was about time, but it entered into force 1st of July last year for the stablecoin part. And now it has come fully into force since the beginning of this year for everything, for all the other aspects of the regulation. The regulation is quite heavy. It deals with issuance of crypto assets, offer to the public of crypto assets. It deals with all the crypto asset services that platform can render. So from custody to crypto to fiat, operating an exchange, receiving and transmitting orders, advising on investment on crypto, managing a portfolio of crypto, etc. So it's super, super heavy. It's like a 200 pages long regulation. And that's just the tier 1 regulation. Then, of course, you have all the implementation guidelines from the EBA, from ESMA, from the national regulators, etc. So it's very heavy to digest. For the stablecoin part, it has already had an effect because only authorized and regulated stablecoin can be issued in the EU. So, for example, USDC issued from Circle had obtained an authorization to issue in France, for example. But for example, Tether with USDT has not obtained a license. They don't want to go to obtain one. So for example, all the exchanges and platforms in the EU had to delist all the pairs in USDT. So that's a very big impact for stablecoins. And then for the rest, for all the other platforms, the transition period is going to end at the end of June. So now we are really in the finish line. where the previously regulated actors under national regimes, for example, in France, we had about like 120 players registered. They have to transition towards MiCA. And the file is very much heavier. You have a lot of policies to put in place. You have substance requirements. You have KYC, AML to implement. You also have a part that is dealt with by DORA, which deals with cybersecurity, etc. So it's very, very heavy. And so what we're seeing now is that, I just give you the example for France, but we have 120 vast players that were registered under the French national regime. We think that under MiCA, we will only have about 30 players. So you can see how strict the regulation is, because the number of players is really diminishing a lot. And we're also assisting to a phase of M&A. We're currently advising at the firm several M&As where small, vast players are being acquired by bigger ones. So you also have a consolidation phase because the regulation is pretty heavy as well. So MiCA will be fully operational, and the transitional period will end at the end of June. And as from that moment, will be fully under MiCA, because the former national regimes will completely vanish and will be terminated. For the companies that are not ready at that moment and who have not obtained the license at that moment, they need to cease their activity. So there have been some publications already from the French regulator saying that if it happens that we think you will not qualify to become a proper MiCA licensed entity, we need to organize the proper cessation of activity. You need to organize the migration of your clients towards regulated entities, etc. So like literally they have to stop that business. They cannot promote, they cannot render any services anymore, and they have to handle the business to someone else that is allowed to. So that's a very big, the big actuality at the moment in France, this transition regime with in the background M&A transactions and consolidation.
Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, so I'm going to move on to question number 2. In your view, what are the most effective strategies for regulators to strike a sustainable balance between fostering innovation in blockchain and fintech and ensuring robust consumer and investor protection? Shagun?
So I think very similar to the approach that we've been following and what we've seen in certain other jurisdictions also, right? I think it has to be a light touch approach. You can't heavily regulate an emerging technology sector, at least that's my view, because you're only going to sort of hamper innovation. Right. I believe, a light touch approach where you have, you foster innovation in the sense of you create an ecosystem where you have your regulatory sandboxes that exist, and we have that now in India. So in each sector, we have sectoral regulators. We have the RBI, which is for the payment world, which regulates your banks and your non-bank entities. They're called reporting entities. We have SEBI, which is the Securities Exchange Board, which regulates the securities market. We have the IRDAI, which is the insurance sector. Now we also have an FIU, which is specifically for crypto, until the crypto regulator is there specifically set up, which we don't have even today. What all of these are doing, except FIU, because it's very nascent in its stages, they're creating this regulatory sandbox concept, and they're talking about all of the things and all of the technologies like AI, etc., where you can use and you can explore in that particular sandbox. So I think that's really helping with fostering innovation. We saw that when there was a complete ban, a lot of technology companies got, they actually left India. This light touch approach is what I believe would really work. I think we've seen it happen and work really well in our fintech sector. I'll give you an example of UPI. If I can give you the astounding number of the transactions that we've recorded at the end of 2025 is 3 billion USD. So you can only imagine, we have the population that we have, it's a lot. But to actually be able to penetrate, like I said, to the urban and the rural community, and to be able to make these technologies available is only if the government and the private players work together. So in this case, the RBI came together with the National Payment Council of India. They opened it up to private players. and you were able to use UPI at like one touch of your mobile phone, and that's led to this astounding number of 3 billion USD of transactions. And I think that's the only way forward. We see it work well in the fintech space. There are other sort of mobile. We have something called digital lending as well, which again was very restricted in the past. Now private players are allowed to participate and give loans, and it's opened up that to anyone and everyone. It's not only now banks that are allowed. There are specific regulations for that. But like I said, fostering innovation, not banning it completely. So we're hoping it's similarly adopted in the blockchain and crypto space. The blockchain space, we've actually seen the government be very pro-blockchain. We've seen them use from every government. We have different state governments. In India, we have the concept of it's not one central government. We do have a central government, but each state has its own government as well. We've seen a lot of governments come forward and adopt blockchain. So they are using it for land records, right? We have our history goes back. We've seen that for other other supply chain, sort of in the supply chain ecosystem as well. From the farmer, which is the agricultural land, which is again 70%, to when the agricultural proceeds reach the end consumer, we're able to track it. All this through adoption of blockchain by the government, and if the government sort of pushes for it, it helps, in that sense. Let's hope the same happens for crypto. Like I said, we still have a long way to go, but time will tell where we end up. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Very interesting. Stefan?
Actually, I concur with what Shagun said. Ideally, we would need a light touch approach regulation. Let's say that at the level of the EU, so basically under MiCA, which already covers 27 countries. The balance, in my opinion, has not been struck right. As I said, the regulation is extremely heavy. Small players are being currently wiped out, and actually it's favoring big exchanges, very, very big exchanges, big banks, big asset managers, but crypto natives firms that were startups and that had managed to grow, they are very few, to be honest. So I guess MiCA has set the bar very high. So from a certain perspective, from a consumer perspective, of course, it's good because when you deal with crypto in the EU now, at least you know that you are, of course, almost sure that the application that you use or the services that you use are, let's say, safe because you have well-capitalized actors with competent management, with plenty of policies, the KYC AML is ensured. So here, I guess you have quite strong protections, which is good from the consumer perspective. But then for innovation, for growth, for employment, for investment, etc., of course, it is more difficult for Europe to compete. And especially when we see what is happening in other jurisdictions, and especially in the US. For example, in the US, they did the exact opposite. So they went, as you said in your question, from enforcement to regulation. They were full against crypto for several years, prosecuting even like the super well-established and most serious players, such as Consensus, Uniswap, and projects like this. So they went from this to a place where there is no regulation and everything can happen. And they are currently working on several laws that should be quite flexible and that are supported by the sector. So most probably the US is going to become, and I'm sure Shagun, maybe you will agree with me, the jurisdiction to launch new crypto projects. There is a lot of things happening there. Very big players are joining the ecosystem. With that, BlackRock is investing. Apollo is investing. Very, very big traditional financial firms are introducing or including blockchain into their products, into their services. So with these new jurisdictions emerging, with the US opening to this sector, we're yet to see whether Europe needs to maybe to review what has been done and to alleviate a bit the burden on European companies.
Thank you, Stefan. I'm going to move on to our last question, number 3. So how can AI and other technology-driven compliance tools support firms in navigating increasingly complex and fast-evolving regulatory frameworks, and what limitations or risks should be considered? Shagun?
I think this question is something every day, we try to figure this out as to how best not only our clients, I think even from a law firm standpoint, right? What is it that we can do to use an AI tool in its most efficient manner? We're seeing these tools being deployed more and more every day from a client standpoint. How effective they are, I think it's maybe too soon to sort of see the results. It's important that we continue to kind of monitor to see, how accurate the outputs are. Is it actually really, able to keep track of, the changing regulations, etc. So maybe from a smart contract perspective, when it's purely contractual, I think it may be easier. But at least in the Indian jurisdiction, a lot of our regulations, right, are available on government websites. And it's very difficult because there are government websites, while there are central websites like the sectors I told you. Let me again, maybe just refresh: the RBI, the IRDA, the insurance sector, the payment sector, we have the securities sector, things like that. Regulations are available, but they're not updated. So when you're talking about an AI tool that can actually help navigate this complex and fast framework, my first sense would be, can it even monitor such frameworks in real time? We have amendments that are introduced to our regulations, at least in the last 5 to 6 years, almost on a quarterly basis, if not sooner. All our major legislations have undergone changes, whether it's our labor codes, whether it's our data related, our data regime has completely been overhauled. Our crypto regulations are, we are every day introducing new KYC and AML related requirements, keeping pace with the US, as Stefan said, right? Because that's the benchmark which we are kind of following. How are they working on stable coins? How are they working for, how are they sort of dealing with sort of all of this? So it's very difficult for us to have a tool, at least for now, to be able to use something that can help, sort of track everything in real time, because it's not possible. Humans can't do it because it's not available. So for AI tool to be able to integrate and have that, even if you look at your Chat GPT and your Claude versions today, they give you information which is what they've been trained on 10 years ago, right? Unless you tell them, I want to know what is in the public domain right now. Otherwise, it's been trained, say 10 years ago. It'll never be updated in that sense until you ask for a particular regulation. And in India, there are a lot of hallucinations because the regulations are not updated. So they will be missing some notification of the RBI. If you go just see the RBI website, you will be overwhelmed with the number of notifications that we have there. So I think the idea is that yes, we have to adopt something, but we need to be very mindful of the tools that we're adopting. And when we're adopting them, of course, what we are telling our clients is, be accountable, regardless of whether you have your AI tool. You have to be the one who has to have human oversight over it, because it's going to be your responsibility. You cannot you can't be guaranteed a particular outcome 100%. So definitely the accountability is big. Data is one of our biggest risks, because what are you really putting in the tool? Do you even have permission to put that into the tool, especially client-facing sensitive data? You need to ensure you have those disclosures that you're making to all of the people whose data you're using. And from an intellectual property standpoint, again, do you have ownership over that data to use it? Is it data in the public domain? We currently have a judgment which is pending, which is going to sort of maybe pave the direction of how AI tools are used in India. It's against OpenAI. It's one of the cases that's going on as to whether the data that OpenAI has been trained on, is that legitimate? Is that actually, is it copyrightable of a third-party entity, which is ANI in this case? It's a newspaper periodical that has filed this complaint, or is it sort of data which is available in the public domain and hence can be used? So we are very certain to let our clients know that be sure that the data that you're inputting has to be kosher. It has to be compliant with, the law, at least as it stands today. So I think these are the major concerns, because technically, as a consumer, there are no real rights available to you in situations like this, unless there's like a specific fraud that has happened, by when you've used AI, etc. So I think these limitations, at least with the tools, exist today, and these are the inherent risks that I see from, a compliance standpoint.
Thank you, Shagun. You make some very interesting points. Stefan?
It's a difficult question. In any case, the regulation that we have and the laws today are not talking about whether you should use or not this tool, or whether you're allowed to use AI or not. I think it's for each client, depending on the sector, depending on what they do, to deploy AI responsibly, of course. But yes, we see more and more clients introducing AI in their workflows. It could be, as Shagun said, for fraud detection. It could be for market abuses detection. It could be to also maybe just to draft policies to handle customer complaints and stuff like that. We don't have a lot of overview of what is happening, to be honest, at the moment. I think everyone, even us as lawyers, are experimenting using AI. We should just do it responsibly, and also, of course, always have humans in the loop to make the last verification or the last call or the last decision, and not outsource everything to AI, even though some clients are leaning towards it. Maybe what's worth flagging here for Europe is that Europe has adopted an AI Act. It's been quite criticized by AI players in the EU. Again, Europe is regulating a lot, regulating quickly and regulating heavily. It doesn't really talk about crypto. It actually talks about certain models and certain things that are forbidden for certain models. But yeah, that's a peculiarity that we have in the EU, is that we have a specific act. I'm not an expert on this act, but we do have a partner who's specialized in AI and who's quite knowledgeable about it if needed. But yes, this is all what I can say about AI for crypto actors.
Thank you so much, Stefan. Thank you to both of you. That was so informative, really interesting, and you both spoke so succinctly. It was just really easy to follow and to understand. So I really appreciate your time and for joining the roundtable today. Would you like any closing thoughts or any contributions before we finish today?
No, I think thank you. It's so interesting to get the perspective of, EU, at least in France, because we try to, constantly keep up with what's happening in other jurisdictions, because it's important to know. And our clients are, of course, global entities, right? So they're based both in the US, the EU. So we're looking at it from all perspectives: data, the current regime, how is it sort of favoring crypto players? Is it favoring fintech players, or is it sort of leaning towards a more negative stance, like how India used to be at some stage, at least in the crypto space? So it's really important. It was really helpful to hear what Stefan had to say, I think. So thank you for that perspective. It's always good to know.
Yes, I agree, Shagun. And what's funny is that when you look and when you compare, because of course, and I'm sure it's the same for you, Shagun, crypto is a global market. It's not that you are launching a project just to address, for example, Indian people, or just to address French people. Our clients have global goals, and when they launch a project, they intend to cover as many jurisdictions as possible. And so it's very interesting to see that almost everywhere in the world, the flow is, or let's say the direction is the same. So the asset crypto as an asset class is being recognized. Crypto as an asset class is currently being received by national laws, which is evolving to adapt. A lot has been done, I guess, in many countries, and also many big institutional players, which were a bit afraid maybe of the asset class, are coming. Certain big names are coming quicker than others, but slowly but surely, I guess finance will move on chain. Crypto assets will be distributed by banks. The retail will have access to it, and it's going to be the same almost everywhere. So we can see, the flow is almost the same in India and in France. still we are very different countries. We are far away, but still the same is happening at the same time in the two jurisdictions. So I think that's very interesting, and this is also why I guess we should be optimistic, because at the end of the day, blockchain will be globally adopted, cryptos will be globally adopted, and as you said, Jenny, in one of the questions, I guess slowly the consumers will get more and more sound products, more and more protection. At the same time, new use cases will evolve and will arrive. So that's why I'm optimistic.
Yes, and look forward to continuing to learn and staying connected, Jenny and Stefan.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I for sure look forward to future interactions, be it in roundtable or other. Thank you. Thank you for your
Jenny.
time. Thank
Thank you, Shagun. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.